I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. So today I'd like to welcome to the podcast Steven Strecker. Steven Strecker is the president of Tower Realty Partners, working in the healthcare real estate industry for the last several years. Steven has worked with hundreds of healthcare professionals, from startups to relocations and expansions to additional offices. Steven ensures the lease or purchase is set up correctly and believes that this is the foundation for successful practices. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So first question's always the same. What was your first job?
My first job was, I believe it was working at a farm, moving sprinkler lines for horse fields, or for horses, yeah.
Was that here in Colorado or?
No, it was in Washington State.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get into commercial realty?
Got into commercial realty, real estate by, it was really an opportunity where my brother-in-law had worked for a firm, and basically I owned a construction and landscape company, and so I was looking to make a change. I had a bunch of employees and was just kind of running a lot of people, and so I was looking to make a change, and there was an opportunity for me to go work for a company that did real estate, and so I kind of just made the change, went from construction to real estate.
Was it a huge step, or? It's so
Felt
funny.
like
People are
it.
always like, this is my next life.
Yeah. At the time, it kind of felt like it because it was a total industry or a career switch, and then it required us moving from Colorado Springs to Denver. So, yeah.
So I want you to explain to us what a commercial real estate broker is and how they're different from a residential real estate broker. I think most people are really comfortable with what a residential real estate broker does, but I don't think most people are comfortable with what a commercial real estate broker does.
They're very similar as far as their role and their licensing. I think the difference is that there's not a Zillow or a Realtor.com that you can just go to and get the information that you need. So it's more or less lease rates, purchase prices, all that are fully negotiable. And so when it comes to adding the concessions that you may need for your practice, every business is going to be different as far as what they need and what they require. And so when we're looking at doing a lease, for example, if you're a small startup business, you may need a lot of free rent and a lot of concessions from the landlord, and that all gets factored into what the lease rate is. And so a commercial realtor will go out and help you find the right location, identify properties that are suitable for your needs or your business needs, and then help negotiate that the deal points of that.
That's awesome. So Tower Realty Partners focuses on veterinarian and medical practices. Why this focus?
It's a very specific need, and they have very specific requirements as far as exclusivities, what they need from landlords, from parking, visibility, all those things. And so once we understand it and understand those needs, it helps us achieve the best deal points for the client. And then also it allows us to fully understand how their businesses are ran, and be able to dig in and get the landlords basically to give us the best terms.
That's awesome. So what are some of the biggest obstacles in finding or creating space for a new or growing practice?
Some of the biggest obstacles for a veterinarian could be, for example, could be the zoning could be a big challenge.
Oh,
We've had a couple properties where we've looked at where the doctor wanted to be in a specific area, and then we jumped in, we started negotiating on it, and then we found out that the zoning was not suitable for a veterinarian. The HOA or the shopping center excluded that use, and so you can waste a lot of time if you don't know that stuff up front. there's also exclusivities that other medical professionals can put on centers, and some of those can be challenges to make sure you identify the right shopping centers that have availability for that use.
That's interesting. So I didn't realize zoning could be an issue. So how does commercial zoning generally work? So the shopping center or whatever is zoned for a specific purpose, and does that exclude medical sometimes, or how does that work?
Yeah, sometimes it'll exclude the general use of medical or healthcare. Other times it'll be that specific niche.
Oh, wow.
And when we're negotiating, if it's a dentist or a veterinarian, we're going to want an exclusive for that entire center. So that way a competitor can't come in and open up shop right next door to where you're making a large investment.
And your marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And so really, whoever put the other person in there should have done their job as well and done that for that client. And so when we're looking at centers, really, you can find hundreds of properties that could be potential fits for a client. The hard part comes into digging into asking questions, getting the landlord brokers to look through all their documents to see if there's anything that excludes that use before we even present it to our client. Because I think saving time is also saving money.
So there's a lot of work you guys are doing under the surface or on the back end to make sure it's actually a viable space before you're like, hey, let's go look at it.
Exactly, yeah. Most of it.
And the client's like, I love it. And you're like, crap.
Exactly, yeah. Most of it. I think most of the work actually goes in behind the scenes before you ever even look at it.
That's
from
awesome.
What we do. Yep.
You just answered that one for me. So you and your team help people with their current and renewing leases. How do you help with lease negotiations? So this is something about commercial realty that I've just really kind of learned about recently. Like, I kind of knew you guys did this, but this is like the big thing you do. So can you talk about lease negotiations and what that looks like?
Yeah. So lease negotiations for us is, again, we have to understand the client's needs and what the client really wants to achieve long run. If you're wanting to stay a long time, or if your plan is to sell your practice in 3 to 5 years, all of those things factor into how we would approach a negotiation with the landlord.
Goal-based.
We always, though, represent the client, so we don't represent the landlord, and we're going to go into this negotiation fully on the client's behalf, on the tenant and the buyer side. And what we're going to do is we're going to understand their business, understand what they need to do, and then we're going to go in and try to get the landlord to give us those concessions. A lot of times it comes down to lease rate is the biggest one. Second, though, is do we need free rent? Is there improvements that need to be done to the space? Carpet and paint is a big one. Does it need an updating? And then we go in and get the landlord to pay for that. So every landlord, every situation is totally different. So there's not a cookie cutter box. So really it comes down to understanding the market, the tenant, and then also finding out what we can get the landlord to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are renewing leases without knowing they can negotiate. And then because Colorado's so crazy right now with prices and stuff, I mean, you're seeing a lot of people having their rates jacked on renewals, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yep.
So how do you help people do? I mean, you're just like, hey, we have to negotiate this. So that's really interesting. So that's something that I didn't realize was that big of a thing, but I guess it makes a lot of sense that you have somebody who can be like, this isn't fair market rent.
So landlords, this is their job. They are professionals at being landlords, and they're professionals. Their job is to get the most amount. Their job is to get you to pay as much money as possible with giving you the least amount of concessions. That's how they make the most money. And so when we say that we're going to represent you, it's kind of the same thing as trying to go to court without an attorney. There's nobody in your corner that understands how to represent you or how to get you the best deal. So a lot of times when we're representing the client, the landlords will even take the client more serious because they understand that they have somebody in their corner that understands the industry and what should be expected. In Denver specifically, rates are just increasing all the time. And so a lot of times it's not necessarily you're paying X amount of money and we're going to reduce that. It's more or less that it's not going to go extremely high from moving forward. Because a lot of landlords right now are seeing that they've been maybe the rate has been under market, and they're wanting the renewal time to be a time when they increase your rate a lot. And so we can keep that from happening. We look at the market. We use other properties as negotiation and as leverage, basically, to keep your rates low.
That's really interesting. So talk to me some more about what you're seeing in the Denver commercial real estate market right now.
The Denver real estate market in general is like nuts as far as the amount of growth that's happening, and then also the lack of it.
Yeah, commercial's just been exploding the last few years.
Yep.
But are any of those buildings full? That's what I want to know. Every time I see a new building going up, I'm like, how are you going to fill that building?
I know. I think that there's a lot of buildings that aren't full right at the beginning, but I mean, office space in general, I think, is very limited in Denver. And then, so you have office space and you have retail space. Retail, I think, is where most people that are wanting to do a startup, veterinary and dental practice, are going to end up, and that is very competitive right now. Because if a Starbucks goes into a building, for instance, it's like, so does every other business. They want to be next to that.
Unless you have coffee, then you cannot.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Exclusive. But they...
or you can just not give people coffee in your business.
Yeah. But they... retail is going nuts, and then same thing with office. I mean, it's filling up dramatically. And I think that I forget, there was a report that came out that said that there was like less vacancy now. I don't remember exactly what the stats were, but it was very low as far as what availability.
So what do you see in the future, though, for commercial space? Because we now see like co-working spaces, and a lot of people are, remote workers and things like that. So what do you see for commercial space, especially like office space? I think like the veterinarians and the medical, they have to have a place for people to go. But what do you see for commercial office spaces in the future?
Every market will correct itself. So it's kind of coming to a place now where I believe that there will need to be some kind of correction. But it's too hard to say if there's, if it's going to be a recession to where there's going to be a lot of availability come on board with other businesses going out of business or not. I just don't think that it's sustainable for rates to continue to climb at the rate that they have over the last 6 years. I don't know that it's sustainable for small businesses. So some kind of recorrection or some kind of stabilization probably will need to happen. And then anytime that happens, it creates more availability. So really, in a recession is when you can take advantage of reducing your rates and reducing your overhead. And then take that money that could be a savings on your rent and turn it into marketing. So it's good for the economy. It's good for small businesses, and it's probably due anytime now.
I was going to say, I'm looking at some of the rent on some of our clients. You and I are working on a client right now, and I'm just like, I don't know how this is doable, and how this is going to be sustainable. For businesses.
When landlords can get, another a pizza shop or a cell phone storage or a cell phone place to pay those rates, they're going to demand that same for our clients, in healthcare, and it's like it really hurts when it's such a high number. But to get the big visibility and to get the spots that drive a lot of the traffic, sometimes you have to pay those rates, and for maybe an extra $1,000 or $1,500 a month or whatever to get that spot, sometimes it can be worth it.
Yeah.
And then you just have to
invisibility.
Yep. So then you just have to produce.
Yeah, and I think especially if you have a business where people, are looking for what's local, right? They're looking for the local whatever. So generally, those spaces are important. We want to be able to get in and out of there. I know our vet is like in this little tiny space, and it's like the hardest to like park in there, and I'm just like all these things have built up around them, like there's just this little tiny space, and I'm like always parking in the business next door. They probably don't like that, but I am, because I was like, I gotta get my dog in and out, and like I can't in these little tiny spaces. So that's really important. Okay, so before I ask my last question, where is the easiest place for people to find you?
The easiest place is probably just to give me a call or shoot me an email. We are rebuilding our website right now, but that's just going to be tower-brokers.com. My email is Stephen, it's Stephen at tower-brokers.com.
Yeah, and we link everything in the description box.
Yeah,
it'll be down there if you need it. Okay, so final question. What is the one piece of advice you would give a business owner who is looking for commercial space?
It's very important to hire a representative. It needs to be somebody that can go out there and work on your behalf, and to make sure they understand the market that you're wanting to be in, and understand the industry that you want to be in. Doing it on your own is just something that's not smart. Landlords don't take into account that you have a broker or don't. They have already set aside their fee to pay their broker, and whether you're represented or not, they're paying that same rate. So having somebody that works on your behalf is critically important. And for us, we never charge our clients because we're always paid for by the landlord. And that's the same for any broker. So it's really important to have somebody who understands you, your business needs, and will take the time to understand that to help make sure that you get the best deal.
So it's pretty much a win-win. You have somebody working for you that you don't have to pay.
Exactly. We're one of the only people that you'll not pay.
That's interesting. That's not how it works around here. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
So, yeah.
I've said that a few times. I'm losing it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.